Hello everybody, and welcome back to another character video. Or should I say, a characters video. And what is the most requested character video I've gotten thus far? Today I will be covering perhaps the most famous couple in Warcraft's lore. Today we'll be looking at the High General and the Ranger Captain, Turalyon and Alleria Windrunner. Y'all know the drill by now. I'll be covering Turalyon and Alleria's history, but afterwards I think I'm going to be making a little bit more channel history today with my opinion piece. Although I'm sure my opinions of the both of them will sneak themselves in, today I'm going to be explaining why I believe whenever and however Blizzard introduces them, it's going to end up backfiring on them. But we're going to start with history, so let's get right into that. We first see an appearance by Alleria Windrunner during a conflict between the Amani Empire and the High Elves of Quel'Thalas 2,800 years ago in a conflict known as the Troll Wars. Alleria gained fame for the absurd amount of trolls she personally slain during this conflict, and proved her abilities as a ranger. With the help of the humans of Arathor, the High Elves were successful in driving back the Amani and winning the war. Following the war, the High Elves were indebted to the Kingdom of Arathor, which laid the groundwork for a different kind of alliance millennia later. It was honored during the Second War when Anduin Lothar, last descendant of King Thoradin of Arathor, led the Alliance of Lordaeron to war against the Orcish horde. At the onset of the Second War, the Convocation of Silvermoon, the ruling council of Quel'Thalas, saw the horde as an excuse to fulfill their debt rather than act as an actual threat. Except for Alleria, that is. She was one of the few High Elves who believed the Orcs to be a true and legitimate threat to her people, and as such took a group of her rangers south to join the alliance. Meanwhile, in the city of Stratholme in Lordaeron, the leader of the Holy Order of Northshire Clerics, Alansis Fowl, sought to use the Holy Light in an offensive capability against the Horde, after Stormwind fell to its might despite his order's existence. Fowl chose his apprentice Uther, as well as 4 others, Tyrion Fordring, Sidon Datharan, Gavinrad the Dire, and a young Turalyon to undergo this martial training, and thus the Knights of the Silver Hand were born. With the Horde bearing down upon Lordaeron, the Silver Hand was sent south to shore up the kingdom's defenses. Anduin Lothar, the supreme commander of the Alliance of Lordaeron's forces, chose Turalyon as his second-in-command. This act caused Turalyon, who questioned his own worth after being handpicked by Fowl to become a paladin, to question himself even further. This insecurity would lead Turalyon to be unable to call upon the light in a manner like Uther and the others could. It was also during this time that the young paladin met Khadgar, former apprentice to Medivh, the last Guardian. Turalyon accompanied the Alliance's army to Hillsbrad to defend the South Shore from the Horde, who had already landed on the region's beach. It was here that Alleria met Turalyon for the first time, and she would accompany him and Khadgar in the campaign to expel the Horde from Lordaeron. After pushing the Horde from their beach landing in South Shore, Turalyon and Alleria accompanied the Alliance's forces in following the Horde, which had begun marching on the Wildhammer Dwarves' capital of Airy Peak. However, this was a feint, as the Horde sent most of their forces to attack Quel'Thalas, while a smaller force occupied most of the Alliance's army in the hinterlands. In response, Lothar sent Turalyon, Alleria, and Khadgar to intercept the Horde before the High Elves' kingdom burned, but they were too late. The Horde had already seized the island of Caer Dawel, allowing them to obtain an ancient High Elven runestone, which allowed Gul'dan to create Ogre Magi for the Horde. With their forces empowered even further now, the Orcs marched on to Quel'Thalas. They attacked and destroyed Stratholme, Tyr's Hand, and began setting Eversong Forest in southern Quel'Thalas ablaze. Alleria led the Alliance army in defense of her home, reuniting with her sister Sylvanas, and Sylvanas' second-in-command, a man named Lorthamar Theron. And although the Alliance managed to save Inner Quel'Thalas, the cost was terrible. 18 of Alleria's kin, including her younger brother, were killed in the Horde's rampage. In her grief she turned to Turalyon, and the two of them began growing close, and soon they were romantically involved. This union resulted in Alleria becoming pregnant with their son, the half-elf Eretor. However, Quel'Thalas' burning also created a fierce hatred in Alleria's heart. She came to see the Orcs as little more than vermin to be exterminated, and vowed vengeance against the Horde for her home. In a larger context, though, the Horde's direct attack on Quel'Thalas convinced the High Elves to finally commit to the Alliance of Lordaeron fully. When Turalyon left Silvermoon, he left at the head of an elven armada. Meanwhile, the Horde had secretly struck a deal with Lord Aiden Perrinhold of Alterac to pass through his lands in exchange for the survival of his kingdom. This gave the Horde an express route directly to Lordran's capital city, and the war nearly was won for them at this battle. But a combination of Turalyon's arrival with the High Elves and Gul'dan's betrayal of Orgrim Doomhammer, the Horde's war chief, cost the Horde the battle. With the tides of battle having turned, Turalyon and his forces chased the Horde back to Southshore, as the rest of the Alliance liberated the dwarven city of Ironforge, pushing the Horde all the way back to Blackrock Spire. Turalyon Alleria and their forces then recombined with Lothar's forces for the decisive battle of the Second War at Blackrock Mountain. The battle was devastating for both sides, and while the Horde and the Alliance clashed, Turalyon saw Lothar fighting against Warchief Orgrim Doomhammer himself in single combat. The Paladin tried desperately to make his way towards his commander, but was blocked by Orc warriors and could do nothing but watch on in horror as Doomhammer shattered Stormwind's great royal sword and brought his hammer down on Lothar's helm with a sickening crunch. Shoving his way through the battle, Turalyon knelt by Lothar's body as Doomhammer laughed and proclaimed his victory in the battle. He spoke, "I have conquered, and so shall all our foes die until your world belongs to us." But what was meant to disenfranchise the Paladin did not. It brought him to a revelation. He had been struggling with his faith, and had been unable to wield the light like Uther and the other Paladins of the Silver Hand. He could not understand how to reconcile the existence of the light, and its supposed ability to unite all the creatures while being as cruel and monstrous as the orcs walked amongst the world. But Doomhammer's comments reminded him that the orcs were not of this planet. Turalyon realized that the light could only unite the creatures of Azeroth, and those that did not belong here, such as the orcs, could be struck down with impunity. Now confident in his faith, Turalyon rose, taking Lothar's shattered sword in one hand, and began to shine with a brilliant glow that forced the battlefield to shield their eyes. Wielding his fallen mentor's weapon and his warhammer, the now general roundly defeated Orgrim Doomhammer in combat. He disarmed the warchief and struck him unconscious, causing his orcs to cower from him as the light surrounded Turalyon once again and blinded them all. Doomhammer had thought Lothar's death would disenfranchise the Alliance, securing victory for the Horde. The complete opposite happened. Turalyon and the other Paladins rallied the Alliance forces, causing the orcs to panic. A few stood and fight, some surrendered, and others fled. After the battle ceased, Turalyon himself spoke to Doomhammer. "You will stand trial for your crimes. You will stand in the capital city in chains as the leaders of the Alliance decide your fate, and there you will acknowledge your full defeat. But you will not be so lucky. You will die there with the rest of your kind, and this world will be rid of your taint forever." With the battle won, Turalyon assumed control over the Alliance's army, being Lothar's second in command. Uther, who had also taken part in the battle, expressed his happiness at seeing Turalyon's faith having returned. As a thanks, Turalyon bestowed the title of the Lightbringer upon Uther. With their war chief captured, defeat was all but certain for the Horde. What remained of the orcs fled back towards the Swamp of Sorrows and the Dark Portal. Under the general's command, the Alliance succeeded in destroying the portal, trapping the remaining orcs on Azeroth. With no reinforcements and fracturing from within because of infighting, the Horde buckled in on itself and fell before the Alliance's might. Rounding up the scattered orc clans, the Alliance placed them into guarded internment camps and began rebuilding their devastated kingdoms. During this relative peace, Turalyon sought to live his life with Alleria and their son, but the High Elf was still driven by her hatred of the orcs. She led an elite cadre of rangers hunting down the renegade orcs of the Bleeding Hollow clan, who had been trapped on Azeroth alongside the other orcs because of the portal's closing. The Alliance had thought the Horde was done for, but they were wrong. On Draenor, Ner'zhul seized control over the tattered remains of the Horde, who were now leaderless, without Orgrim Doomhammer or Gul'dan and his puppet Blackhand. Having become bitter about Gul'dan betraying him to become the shadow leader of the Horde, Ner'zhul agreed to a plan by the first original Death Knight Terran Gorefiend to open up a portal from Draenor to a different world from Azeroth to escape. Because at this point Draenor had begun deteriorating to a degree because of the fell magic Gul'dan and his warlocks unleashed. At Ner'zhul's command, Gorefiend returned to Azeroth with several Horde heroes, including Grom Hellscream, Kargath Bladefist, and Dentarg, to retrieve several artifacts Ner'zhul needed to open portals off of Draenor. They were also aided by Deathwing himself, who sought to take his eggs to Draenor after his plan to steal Alexstraszus was stopped by the other four aspects. Together, the small strike team, plus a giant dragon, was successful in stealing the Book of Medivh, which was the last Guardian spellbook, the Eye of Dalaran, a device the mages of Dalaran used to focus their magics, the Jeweled Scepter of Sargeras, an artifact once belonging to the Dark Titan himself, and finally, the Skull of Gul'dan, which was said to hold great demonic power on its own. With the supposedly defeated Horde now having attacked 2 Alliance cities, Dalaran for the Eye and Stormwind for the Book of Medivh, after their loss of the Second War, the Alliance soon feared the Horde had a second secret army on Draenor, waiting to attack Azeroth once more. In response, the Alliance decided to take the fight to the Horde on Draenor and stop the Orcish threat once and for all. King Taranis Menethil of Lordaeron established the Alliance expedition to travel to Draenor, and picked Turalyon to lead it. Hearing about a team heading to Draenor to attack the Horde, Alleria, who at this point had been separated from Turalyon for some time, agreed to lead her rangers beyond the Dark Portal as well. Before leaving, she had a necklace she wore melted down into 3 pieces, an emerald, a ruby, and a sapphire. She kept the emerald for herself, sent the ruby to her other sister Verisa, and sent the sapphire to Sylvanas. Joining the Star-Crossed lovers on their expedition was Khadgar, Kurdran Wildhammer of Airy Peak, and Nath Trollbane, captain of Stromgarde's military. With the expedition established, they entered the Dark Portal and arrived on Draenor. Here they established the military base of Honor Hold, and soon after the settlement found itself under attack from Hellfire Citadel. The large orc base once served as the Horde's main base of operations through the both First and Second Wars, and was sieging Honor Hold for months before the expedition could organize an effective attack. During this time, Turalyon and Alleria's estranged relationship caused them to butt heads, and Alleria's bloodthirstiness wasn't helping things. It reached such a fever pitch that when their force attacked Hellfire Citadel, Turalyon ordered Alleria to stay behind. It was during this moment that she realized the Alliance expedition's struggle was more than just her own quest for vengeance. She finally let go of her unbridled hatred and allowed herself to grieve for her fallen loved ones. Following this, Turalyon and Alleria resumed their relationship, much to the relief of everybody else in their group. Despite the Horde's defeat at Hellfire Citadel, Ner'zhul and his entourage had already fled south toward Shadowmoon Valley, while Deathwing and his forces were mulling about north in the Blaze Edge Mountains. Khadgar explained that the Skull of Gul'dan, now in the control of Deathwing, was needed to control the portal, but Ner'zhul could not be allowed to escape. Thus they split their forces. Khadgar, Turalyon, and Alleria traveled north to deal with Deathwing, while Nath Trollbane, Alleria's rangers, and Kurdran and his dwarves followed Ner'zhul south. While in Blade's Edge, Turalyon and his group met up with the tribe of Gron and Ogres, both of whom hated the Black Dragons and helped in their battle against them. During an epic battle versus the Destroyer himself, Khadgar manages to damage Deathwing enough for him to drop the skull from his grasp. After they obtain the artifact, the group then promptly flees. Meeting up with Nath Trollbane, the entirety of the Alliance expedition assaults Black Temple, where Ner'zhul's forces held up waiting for the shaman to open up portals off of their dying planet. Turalyon faced off against Terran Gorfiend himself, and the Death Knight fell before Turalyon's holy might. But it wasn't enough to stop Ner'zhul. The expedition was unable to stop him from opening multiple portals at Black Temple's summit and escaping with his advisors. But the fragility of Draenor's structure could not withstand the twisted energies of Ner'zhul's magic, and the entire planet began falling apart. Draenor was experiencing its own cataclysm. Khadgar presented Turalyon and his friends with a terrible choice. If the Dark Portal is not sealed, Draenor's fiery destruction would most likely spill into Azeroth and damage their home. But if the portal was sealed, they could also not return home. Instantly, the entire group agreed. They would seal the Dark Portal to save Azeroth. Returning to Hellfire Peninsula, Khadgar used the Skull of Gul'dan and the Book of Medivh, left behind by Ner'zhul, to close the Dark Portal, ensuring Azeroth's safety. And as Draenor tore apart around them, Turalyon led the forces of the Alliance expedition that were with him through a portal to yet another world, one they could barely make any sense of. After the chaotic destruction subsided, Turalyon, Alleria, Khadgar, Danath, Kurdran, and their forces returned back through the portal to the now shattered world of Outland. After surveying the planet's damage, Turalyon led his allies back to Honor Hold, which had managed to survive Draenor's destruction. With no way home, the expedition's mission had changed. They would safeguard Azeroth from demonic threats by securing Outland. Turalyon himself also proclaimed, "In remembrance of the Supreme Allied Commander Anduin Lothar, a man who would sacrifice everything in the defense of his king, his people, his home. Let our enemies know our names. Let our allies honor our passing. We are the Sons of Lothar. And with that, the Alliance expedition became the Sons of Lothar. Azeroth was unaware of the Sons of Lothar's sacrifice, and given the low likelihood of their survival, Turalyon, Alleria, Khadgar, and the rest were presumed killed in the line of duty. Stormwind, which was being rebuilt following its destruction in the First War, immortalized the Alliance's greatest fallen heroes by creating statues in their honor in the Valley of Heroes. Alleria's statue's plaque was written by her sister Sylvanas and read as such: Ranger Captain Alleria Windrunner, renowned troll hunter of Quel'Thalas, lead scout and intelligent agent for the Alliance expedition that marched into the orc homeworld of Draenor, presumed deceased. Your heart flew straight as any arrow upon the wind, sister. You were the brightest of our order. You were the most beloved of our kin. Turalyon's himself was written by Uther and read as such: General Turalyon, former lieutenant to Lord Anduin Lothar, Knight of the Silver Hand, High General of the Alliance expedition that marched into the orc homeworld of Draenor, presumed deceased. Isaris Thar no Darador, by blood and honor we serve. You were the right hand of justice and virtue, old friend. Your name will be honored in our halls, always. But the Sons of Lothar were not dead. 18 years after the Dark Portal was shut down by Khadgar, Doom Lord Kazak, one of Archimonde's surviving lieutenants from the Third War, discovered a peculiar artifact. This artifact allowed the demon to reactivate the Dark Portal, opening the gateway back to Outland. The current alliance with its new Draenei allies and Thrall's horde, with its orcish roots on Draenor, scrambled to the Shattered World. It was here that Danath, Khadgar, and Kurdran were found alive. Kurdran established Wildhammer Stronghold in the Shadowmoon Valley. Khadgar traveled to Shatrath in Terakar Forest and met the Naru, while Danath remained in Honor Hold. And yet Turalyon and Alleria were nowhere to be found. All there were questions. Questions their son, Eretor, sought to answer. Now an adult, the half-elf traveled to Honor Hold in search of his parents. After failing to gain any information from a drunken Father Malgor in the tavern, Eretor himself questioned Danath. All the commander could offer was that Turalyon and Alleria had been missing for 15 years, and that they presumed them dead. He tells Eretor that they've searched all across Outland, from Hellfire to Nagrand, in search of them, but with no success. Wherever they are, it can be assumed the two are battling against the Legion together. Alright, let's move into their personalities now, shall we? Alleria is extremely skilled at fighting amongst forested areas, and prefers to travel alone. She speaks infrequently and in short sentences. Others have said that the only time they've seen passion in her is regarding her hatred of the orcs. However, it was also said that her resuming her relationship with Turalyon warmed her icy personality. In battle, she prefers to strike from hiding, and uses her speed and mobility to weave in and out of fights. She tends towards taking point-blank shots to maximize their efficiency. Against the orcs, Alleria believes they have no honor, and she has no qualms about killing them from the shadows. Despite her proficiency with the sword, she wields only her father's composite bow, and uses it as a quarterstaff when unable to fire it. Turalyon on his own was considered a kind soul, only wishing for the world to be at peace. His understanding personality allowed him to see through people for what they truly were, such as with Khadgar. Religious orders tended to discriminate against wizards as evil, but Turalyon realized that the mage was a good man, and held no ill will toward his arcane powers. Against his enemy, Turalyon harbors no special hatred, unlike Alleria. He even refused to kill Doomhammer, even after watching him kill Lothar, who Turalyon extremely admired. However, his demeanor changes when innocent lives are threatened. His persona changes from passive to one of a determined avenger, and would have no problem ignoring his own well-being in exchange for the lives of those in danger. In combat, Turalyon is a skilled and fearsome warrior despite initially being a priest, and can handle a fight as well as any knight. After regaining his faith and his power over the light, he spread fear into the hearts of his enemies and encouragement to his own troops through his battle auras. He fights with his warhammers, and his abilities as a paladin give him enough strength to take on dozens of orcs, which are much larger than a human. Finally, he is a skilled tactician, known for using tactics of surprising his enemy forces by directing his knights to charge, while he supports them from a distance with his healing magics and a bow. And finally, Turalyon is perhaps most known for his iconic scene in taking up Lothar's shattered Great Royal Sword of Stormwind after the Supreme Commander's death. During his fight with Doomhammer, Turalyon held the shattered sword high in one hand while fighting with his Warhammer in another, and has been immortalized with the broken sword in Stormwind's Valley of Honor. Alright, so let's move on to the opinion section portion now, shall we? If you couldn't have guessed from my Alliance bias, Turalyon is one of my favorite lore characters. He is an awesome badass, and I really find myself reinvigorated for my love of the Alliance when I was researching this character video. And Alleria herself is pretty cool as well, especially juxtaposed against the current storyline Blizzard has foisted upon the Alliance as being the morally pure ones. It might seem odd that I bring this up when Turalyon himself is actually morally pure, but this was during a time when there were more than just the Alliance must be good storylines. You had characters, for example, such as Gen Greymane or Aiden Parenthold, humans who were pretty terrible people in their own right. But as I said earlier, this is not the point of this opinion section. I suppose I'd started out by asking everybody listening a question instead. How, and in what manner do you believe Turalyon and Alleria should return? Or should they return at all? Should they be Alliance only, or should they be neutral? Or maybe they should be split up. Should Turalyon be neutral, and should Alleria be the Alliance? This, my friends, is the biggest problem for Turalyon and Alleria and their reappearance. There are so many ways to bring them back into the lore that I honestly don't feel as if any decision is going to satisfy any majority of the player base. Personally, I feel it would be an absolute crime to have the two of them be anything other than Alliance only, regardless of whatever storyline Blizzard could cook up to explain why they aren't. Turalyon thought he was giving his life in closing the Dark Portal for the Alliance. He convinced the Sons of Lothar to continue and fight against the various enemies out in Outland on the sheer chance that somehow, even though the portal was closed, that they could pose a threat to their home. He led the army of the Alliance in Lordaeron, for Christ's sake. How could Blizzard ever dare to make him a neutral member? And Alleria? Is that even a question? The vast majority of her lore is about her hatred of the Horde, regardless if they are trolls or orcs. Even after her chilling out and hooking back up with Turalyon, there is zero lore suggesting Alleria would ever side with anybody who is not of the Alliance, whether it is the current Alliance or the Alliance of Lordaeron. If you want to look at it another way, Verisa is now a full-fledged member of the Alliance with the Silver Covenant, and Sylvanas is an undead monstrosity. It would seem far more likely she'd side with her living sister over her undead one, who, by the way, is now allied with trolls and orcs. But do you know what? I've talked to several people who feel the exact opposite. Who feel as if when they are introduced, they need to be leading a force against the Legion and not be involved in the Horde and the Alliance conflict. They need to show both factions that the Legion, or the Old Gods, or the Nightmare, or whatever the next big bad is above the petty conflicts that still are going to exist regardless of Garrosh's defeat. And honestly, this is an entirely reasonable and realistic expectation, even if I vehemently disagree with it. I feel as if that answer is no better than mine. Thus we come to the problem of Turalyon and Alleria. It doesn't matter in which way Blizzard introduces them. People are going to be upset. But I'm already hearing you ask, what makes this different from other characters that people want added into the game? I think there is one key difference, and I think that difference is that Turalyon and Alleria have been built up to be a huge reveal when they enter the game, regardless of what Blizzard's actual intentions are. Let me explain. If they had no plans on adding them into the game, but have simply been leading people on, then it is their fault for not telling us as such. Most of us who play WoW are adults. We can take being told we're not getting something. And if they do still plan on adding them in, the hype surrounding them is totally working against Blizzard's favor here. It's really quite sad because I feel like Blizzard could really build an entire expansion with them as integral characters, like how Rathian or Terran Zoo have been from Mists of Pandaria. But with this overhyping non-answer to the Turalyon and Alleria question we've repeatedly gotten, when they are introduced, it either won't be in a way people want, or it won't be in as big a role that people think they should be. I'm honestly not sure if people will even understand what I'm trying to say here, but damn it, this section is mine to riff on, so deal with it, yo! I suppose I'm just worried that Turalyon and Alleria will become neutral characters when and if they are added, and I'm basing this off of previous Alliance-affiliated characters introduced in WoW. Khadgar sticks out as a great example. I know technically he's part of the Kirin Tor and they are now part of the Alliance, but that isn't shown in the game yet, or whatsoever, and until it is, it doesn't really count in my opinion. But once again, that's not the point of this video, so my final thought is this. I suppose my advice to Blizzard would be to just add them in already. Stop mystifying the nature of their inclusion, or lack thereof. If you don't plan on adding them in, just tell us. And if you do, just add them in already. They should have been part of the Burning Crusade, and I'm still not sure why you decided against it. Every answer I've heard about it has either been an excuse, or the non-answer that I talked about thus far. It's not really a great answer to the question that I pose, but they need to just add them into the game. They need to stop this confusion and hyping and overhyping of these characters, because I can't think of a great example where overhyping a character has ever paid off for you, Blizzard. Just some friendly advice from someone who has played your game for 9 years and is a big fan of your lore. So, and with that garbled mess of an opinion section, we come to the end of another characters video. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. If you disagree with any premise or argument I've made in this video, feel free to leave those in the comments below, and I will be sure to argue or discuss back with you because I love doing that. If you like this video, you can help me out by liking, favoriting, commenting, and subscribing. But as always, the best way you could assist me would be to share my videos with anybody you think would find them interesting. As always, I'm looking to introduce more people to the lore, and if you do, I'll be forever grateful. If you have any suggestions for a character you'd like to see next, leave those in the comments below, and I will do my best to accommodate. As I have said before, I usually only cover characters that I think are relevant to the lore, but I've gotten so many requests for Turalyon and Alleria, I figured I had to cover them at some point. So here you go. Thank you once again for watching, everybody. I'll be sure to catch you next time for whatever we look at next, because in Warcraft, there is always more lore to explore, people. Is it even a question? And I hope when you do that, you do it with me. My name has been Necroxis, and I'll see you next time. Farewell.